Monday evening on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, as a coastal storm it continues to bring some snow and ice to Maine for a little while longer. We have a weather system over the Great Lakes that's heading east, and another storm forming in the southwest that's bringing a lot of snow to some areas in Arizona and neighboring states. Plus, we have something that you rarely see in the month of January, and we'll show you that. All that and more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. They've got mulch, they've got salt, they've got sand, and they've got snow blowers, because haven't had to use them yet. And they've got plenty of salt and scrapers and shovels and more salt, including mag ice pellets and flakes and Pellido. They're at Long Island's largest rock salt source, and their telephone number is 631-756-1125. Nowhere can you find better prices, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Joe.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Rayo. I was
Happy Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
Day.
I was binge watching Murder, She Wrote. It's been that kind of day.
Yeah.
I've discovered I get this channel called the American Family Channel, which I've never seen before, and apparently it's all shows from the 80s and 90s and so on. So anyhow, hopefully you are well.
Well, Gina Lollobrigida died.
Yes, I saw. Yes, or as we know her in the Flintstones as Gina Lollobrigida.
Brigida. I told her not of that. I said I remember one episode.
Oh, Lollobrigida, you're my. I don't remember the next word, and you could do a lot with that. I now remember it was the last thing was about pasta fasul, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
Yeah.
It's too bad they couldn't get her to actually appear on the show like Samantha or Tony Curtis, or should I say Stony Curtis?
Stony Curtis, correct, or Perry Masonry.
Yeah.
Well, good Lord.
She lived a good life. 95.
Yes, she did. She certainly did.
You make it to 90, you've had a life. That's what I can say.
Yep. So, I think if I remember correctly, the last time this happened was in 2016 with the Super El Nino of that year. But they being the National Hurricane Center, has actually had to issue a tropical weather outlook today.
Huh.
I don't know if you saw it.
I didn't.
It was a one-time thing, and they've sort of left the map with a giant X right in the middle there. So they just basically said that it's going to pretty soon be over the the cold waters of the North Atlantic, and not going to be developing. But at least they acknowledged that it was there. And I got the Canadian satellite loop, and you could see it on from their perspective, because it was just getting off the Atlantic coast loop. This morning, it really looked pretty well developed, that center. Now, it's inside this huge cold core storm. The center is, even they said there was convection around the center at all, but because it was basically, inside this cold core storm and surrounded by cold fronts, that it was not tropical. But still, at least from the standpoint of the satellite signature, why not, considering how the first part of the winter is gone?
Why not? It's and the thing is, Joe, that they did pick up in parts of eastern Massachusetts today, at least based upon what I saw on the statement out of I was going to say Taunton. They're not in Taunton anymore. They've moved again, Norton, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And they had in some places upwards to 3 and 4 inches of snow. Pretty good.
Logan got 3.
That's amazing.
In Boston. Yeah, and I was even looking at some of the observations this morning. A couple of places even had moderate snow for a few hours. So, I mean, it did throw back the moisture as advertised. The cloud line was pretty much Western Connecticut, went through Long Island, and that at least made it for a pretty nice day uh, up and down the eastern seaboard. But now we've got, you can see there's three storms here lined up almost like a train. The one that's out in the ocean, and you can see the lightning strike, very small there, but there's some lightning strikes right around the center there. The second system now in the western Great Lakes, moving along to the northeast, and you see the swirl there on the satellite. It's reaching peak intensity now. And we've got one of these western systems that is actually now has moved into the southwest, and the energy is pretty compact. So they're getting some snows. The Flagstaff doing well with some snows. Also in parts of New Mexico, Utah, and into Nevada, and of course the Sierra Nevadas, where I looked at some of the. I think Donner Pass was up to 270 inches or so of snow so far there. I mean, it's just incredible amounts that have fallen out in California with this.
I don't know exactly where it happens to be. Certainly, it's not anywhere in our immediate vicinity, but according to Dr. Cohen, happy MLK Day and Cohen's official first day of winter. On cue, Mother Nature delivers a blanket of white and fresh snow to provide inspiration for today's polar vortex blog, which I haven't yet to read. He does show, maybe it's his backyard, but again, it doesn't look anything like my backyard because there's fluffy flakes falling. The ground is white. So at least somebody out there is getting snow.
Yep. Welcome, everybody, by the way, to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. You can watch the Joe and Joe Show, Joe and Joe Weather Show, Monday through Thursday nights at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time, Sundays at 11 a.m., and we're usually off on Fridays and Saturdays unless there is a storm going on, in which case we rearrange our schedules. And mark down Wednesday, because Wednesday night we're going to have a special guest. We're going to have Jen Walton, who heads the group Girls Who Chase. These are women storm chasers, and we're going to talk to her and just find out exactly. I don't have a really good idea. I have a vague idea as what storm chasers do, but I don't know too much about the equipment they use and the how they decide where they're going to go and so on. So we'll have a lot of questions for her, and of course you folks on the chat board can put your questions up, and we will pass them along. And that's again on Wednesday night of this week, so that's the 18th of January. I almost said the 18th of November, but because it kind of feels that way. Anyhow, we do have a few things going on that I want to make note of on the watches and warnings map, and that is that we have winter storm warnings up for the eastern half of Maine, advisories up for most everywhere else except the far west. We have winter weather advisories up for upstate New York, way up upstate New York, parts of central New York as well. This is for tomorrow. The possibility that there could be some mixed precip, mixed frozen or freezing, probably more freezing precip than anything else. So they're expecting maybe some icing to go on there. Winter weather advisories up tonight for parts of North Dakota, western Minnesota, and parts of northern Wisconsin, western Michigan on the Upper Peninsula. Also in western Montana and a few counties in Idaho. Winter storm watches, western Iowa, in Nebraska as well, in northwest Kansas. We have winter storm warnings up for central and southwest Nebraska, northeastern Colorado. That I believe also includes this. I think they had warnings up for Denver. Looks like they might have changed that on the new map. I'll have to take a look. And also in southwestern parts of Colorado, western New Mexico, we have advisories and warnings. A lot of winter storm warnings up in Arizona, southwestern Utah, parts of Nevada, and also again in the Sierra Nevadas, as that though the snows there continue. I have to say, I don't know about you. I mean, I have to say, let me just bring us back up full screen for a moment here. Just give me a second. the last looking at the runs from overnight and the day runs today, Joe, I think there are there are some glimmers of hope uh, coming, perhaps. We'll still have to probably get through the next 8 or 9 days, but I think there's some glimmers of hope in the long range that there's going to be a shift into the east for a little while.
Well, I've been looking at the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks from the Climate Prediction Center, and slowly but surely, like a gradually expanding balloon, there is an area of below normal uh, conditions, below normal temperatures, expanding out west. And eventually, I guess, it may very well expand to the point where it will reach us here in the east. It's going to be a slow process. It may not be until maybe the very end of January, but things are at least on the maps getting colder. You remember at one time earlier this month, they had the whole United States covered in above normal temperatures. Now it looks like below normal is beginning to expand slowly but surely from the west and moving eastward. And yeah, maybe, just maybe, the door may open for a period of colder than normal temperatures again as we move on toward the end of this month.
Yeah, the European and the Icon, and to a lesser extent the Canadian, are pointing to something maybe next later Sunday or Monday this weekend of maybe just enough cold air and a low going out underneath us, where both those models showed the chance that there could be a few inches of snow. But I would just point out that since November, uh, and every model at one point or another, every one of them at one point or another, has tried to put snow down in the long range in the Northeast, and none of them have been right even a single time.
Right.
So we should just kind of bear that in mind at the moment. Not, I'm not going to completely discount. I kind of see how the model gets to where it gets, given what's going to be going on in the atmosphere over the next few days. Maybe something gets set up when that southwest storm comes out for Thursday. Perhaps it pulls down a little bit of colder air. It's not a lot of colder air around. It's going to be marginal at best, but I could see 100 ways where it goes wrong. One of those ways is that you wind up tracking another low to the west, which is what the GFS does. So I'm not going to get too worked up, and I don't think snow lovers out there should get too excited for another few days at least until we can see some consensus as to how that's going to happen. But for now, start looking maybe further ahead, uh, past this weekend and maybe the middle part of next week, perhaps the latter part of next week, right around my birthday, would be really nice if for something to happen. So
Yeah, well, both the 12 and now the 18Z are signaling that perhaps New York, the tri-state area, will be like right on the fringe of seeing something icy or snowy. They got most of New York State and most of New England. This would be for the 27th, 26th, 27th of January, which would be a week from this coming Thursday. That something may brew into a wintry weather pattern. Like I said, there are there are signs that toward the end of this month it may actually begin to turn, reasonably cold
mhm.
for those who are uh, lovers of snow and cold weather. You just might get your wish finally, but not until later on in this month.
Meanwhile, on the radar tonight, we've got you could see. Let's go up to Maine, where you're still seeing a lot of this action backing westward, but the southern end of it is just about getting ready to pull out of the Cape. But there is some snow, and as we've been saying, warmer air has been coming in from the east, so they're starting to see a change over to sleet and freezing rain in the areas in Maine that have the winter storm warning up. Meanwhile, we've got rain to the west. Actually, the radar is pretty impressive when you look at this. It's hard to believe sometimes when you have a loaded radar, and you know that 12 to 18 hours from now, Joe, most of this is going to wind up falling apart as it comes east because that ocean storm leaves very little room for anything else to survive. And while we do have a well-defined uh, upper air circulation here, well-defined shortwave that is moving through southern Wisconsin, probably some thunderstorms in the mix there too. Uh, there's no room with that storm still out there. Since that's not going to get out of the way very quickly, this thing is just going to wind up slowly weakening as it comes into the drier air that's getting filtered down the East Coast.
Right, and that situation is going to be with us through the next 24 to 48 hours. However, there is another system that is now hitting the western U.S., and that system may be more prolific and may provide a greater threat for precipitation here along about Thursday of this week.
Yeah, and it's already into the southwest, and you can see the radars there with stuff in New Mexico, western Colorado, Utah, Nevada. Some heavy precip in California that's moving eastward there. Some showers scattered from San Francisco down to LA. By the way, San Francisco has gotten 20 inches of rain in total in the last 15 days. And many areas have gotten more rain in California have gotten more rain in these last 15 days than they saw all of last year.
That's wild.
Yeah,
that is wild.
It's the feast or famine, and you know the interesting thing is, there was an article in the Washington Post about a lot of folks, a lot of businesses, particularly. Water's a big deal in California because they don't have a lot of it. So there's a lot of water management that goes on, and they use long-range forecasting. I brought us back full screen there for a minute. They use long-range outlooks from the Weather Service and from probably some private services to sort of figure out what they're going to do with regards to water management for the winter months. And they were all complaining, I guess is the word, because with the La Nina, it should have been dry. In California, or drier than normal. So they were all going on this idea that it was going to be drier than normal, and lo and behold, it was not. It was the exact opposite. They got more water now than they know what to do with, and they just sort of were lamenting about the fact. And actually, the article made some very good points about that. The science with regards to the long range forecasting is not quite there yet. Maybe one day it will be, where they could do these seasonal outlooks and they'll work from a forecast standpoint, but they're not quite there yet, and that leaves those folks in a big dilemma when it comes to trying to make decisions.
Yeah, at 20 inches of rain, just to put this into perspective, 20 inches of rain is almost a half a year's worth of rain for New York City Central Park. I think the average is something like 44 or 45 inches. So we're talking about 20 inches in 15 days. That is on the verge of absurdity. Of course, we have seen absurdity in the past with storms such as Irene in 2011, which dumped about 12 inches of rain over parts of the tri-state area in less than a day.
Yeah,
but
Ida with 12 inches of rain in 6 hours.
Right. So it happens, but that really is and you're right. I mean, we were all told in October, based solely on the fact that La Nina was going to persist right straight through at least the winter season, that it was going to be a drier than normal time for Californians. And look, I think if it hasn't already gone, it's about on its final legs now. La Nina it's transitioning over into the so-called neutral phase or La Nada phase. And Joe, looking down the road, usually when we have, a long-term La Nina and then it goes away, maybe by later this year, maybe by the fall or next winter, we'll be in an El Nino type weather pattern, which would suggest even more wetness for next fall and winter for the folks who are getting hit hard right now.
Yeah, I think, and this was also brought up in the article, and it's something I've said many times. You can't point to there are too many other driving forces in the atmosphere that have to be considered. with regards to you can't just say, oh, it's La Nina, therefore it's definitely going to be this. Okay, you don't know what the state of the polar vortex is going to be in the stratosphere. You don't know where the Madden-Julian oscillation and how that dances around from phase to phase. You don't know where that's going to be. There's just there are too many other factors that are in play that need to be considered. And when they do these long-range forecasts, sure, okay, you're going to say we have La Nina, therefore it's going to look like this. We have El Nino, therefore it's going to look like that. But you cannot discount all the other things that go on around the Earth in the atmosphere in trying to figure. There's just too much. There's just too much out there that we don't know yet when it comes to trying to make solid seasonal forecasts that are useful.
And according to Steve Lapointe, and thank you, Steve, for hitting super chats. Also hitting super chats tonight, Garo Vestas, and earlier in the show, David Fuller. But Steve Lapointe points out today is 313 days since Central Park has seen any measurable snow. I believe it was March the 9th that Central Park recorded measurable snowfall. So 9 days to tie the record and 10 days to beat it. And Joe, why do I think that nature is going to be, a wise guy or a wise gal and decide to drop not a whole heck of a lot of snow, but maybe like
just
2/10
enough
of an inch, just enough.
Well, maybe
that
maybe that system that the European and the Icon are looking at for Monday will work out.
Maybe we'll see.
We'll see. All right. Speaking of snow and snow amounts, why don't we take a look at what WPC is telling us tonight on their probabilities for at least two, and the focus is going to be. Well, it was until I hit the button here. Sorry about that. But the focus is going to be from Colorado northeastward to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where we're looking at 80 to 100% probability of at least two. And also in Utah, parts of Nevada, Sierra Nevadas, up to the Cascades. And if we put the probability of at least 8, you'll see that in northeast Colorado, and across Nebraska on a diagonal into western Iowa, there is an area of 50% or higher probability of at least 8 inches there. And of course, I don't have to tell you that there is almost no probability in the next 72 hours, taking us till to Thursday evening, of anything snow-wise in the Northeast. Just for laughs, let's look at what WPC does. They have anything in their long range here? So on the long range, I guess they haven't updated this map to match up with the update of the other one, because this one has a 50% or 50 to 70% probability of at least of 3 inches or more, northeastern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine. So that really doesn't match up with what WPC did on their short range. But this forecast was put out at a few minutes before noon. This one was put out at just before 4 p.m. Eastern Time. This goes to Thursday night. This first day is Thursday morning to Friday morning. So somebody's not talking to somebody over there at WPC. Friday into Saturday, they've got it up in northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, 10 to 30% there. Saturday into Sunday, a couple of areas out in the northwest, and also in northwest Texas, western Oklahoma, and southern Kansas. And then, oh, look at this. So this is Sunday into Monday, Joe. They've got a 10 to 30. The southern flank of 10 to 30 is at Philadelphia, New York City. So all of New England is in 10 to 30. All of New York State and Pennsylvania in 10 to 30, with a few green blobs here of 30 to 50. And that goes back into Ohio and parts of Indiana and southern Michigan. So they saw what the European did last night, and they didn't see what the European did today, which kind of matches up with what they did last night. So WPC's got something here. Let's see how this winds up, because actually those models that I mentioned before, the European and the Icon, actually have the southern edge of a few inches uh, down into central New Jersey northward. So northern half of New Jersey, Long Island, southern New England, back into southeastern Pennsylvania, all showing a few inches out of that particular system, which we'll show on the maps in a moment. So they seem to see something too.
And it's not against the rules to stick your neck out and cover your what just in case. And so that's, I guess, what they're doing. They're probably saying to themselves, something's got to break eventually. Something's got to happen. So maybe they feel that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. So here we are with the upper air, and really not too. You still see there's some semblance of that lovely Pacific fire hose in effect, and you still have these systems here in the west. You've got one upper low there this evening in where Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin borders all touch. And of course, you've got this upper low off of just south of Nova Scotia. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a kind of little closed low in there to represent the separate surface feature that we were talking about there earlier, that the Hurricane Center actually made reference to today. And again, that system in the ocean kind of weakens the first low as it opens up and moves across southern Canada on Tuesday. But now we've got another short wave and a wrapped up upper low there in southeastern Colorado on Wednesday. That holds together a bit stronger and lifts up towards the Great Lakes and then into the Northeast for Thursday into Friday. So this will hold together and bring some rain. Meanwhile, another system's dropping down the west coast. So the fire hose actually is just about gone by the time we get to Thursday and Friday. It's changing there in the Pacific, and it's going to change some more. Another system drops down into the southwest on Saturday. You see it there in New Mexico. At the same time, you do have a bit of a northern jet here that comes out of Canada. Again, it probably feeds in just a marginal amount of cold air, but sometimes that's all you need. And the southern system gets ejected and it swings eastward. It makes for a nice trough there, swinging into the east on Sunday and Monday. So, maybe something will happen, maybe not. Maybe the GFS is a little overdone with this because I think the European is a little flatter, which is what you want. You're going to want it to be a little weaker here. If you wind up having too sharp a short wave, you're going to take another storm inland and up into maybe western Pennsylvania and western New York, which is what the GFS was still trying to do. While that's happening next week, you can see the troughing that drops down into the Rockies, and suddenly we've got a nice ridge building up into the Pacific Northwest from off the Pacific. And going through the rest of this run, Joe, it does look, I mean, I know it's the 18Z run, but it's not too inconsistent with the 12. I liked this look with the big upper high. Instead of being out over the Aleutians like it was showing yesterday, now it's in the Northeast Pacific, and that's in a much better position to set up what looks like, it looks like almost cross-polar flow here come January 31st and February 1st, coming down from way up in northern Canada and dropping down into the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. This is a fairly cold upper air look that we're seeing here by the time we get to the end of the month.
And that's exactly what I was mentioning at the start of the show, how slowly, and I want to underscore that word slowly, colder air appears ready to flex its muscles and will try to push more and more toward the east into the eastern United States, toward the end of this month. So that for those of you who want to see some winter, that's something for you to possibly hang your hat on.
Yep. Now I'm going to pull up the European. I just want to kind of look at this thing for Sunday into Monday, since we really haven't had much excitement to speak of. But there's that upper low down in New Mexico. This is on Saturday, and then you have this shortwave that comes down in the north. So the European, the interesting thing about the European is, and that's different from the GFS, is the European kicks out that southern system to the northeast while it drops another trough down into Nebraska and Iowa. You kind of want that to happen. What you don't want is that northern stream to phase with that southern stream and make for a sharp trough like the GFS has. And if it's like the European shows, where you wind up taking that southwest system out, and it just sort of holds its own as it moves up into the northeast, then maybe you got a shot. Then maybe you'll have a shot for some snow. But again, a lot has to happen here between now and next weekend, this coming weekend, in order for us to really get a good handle on this.
I
I
know.
Go
I know
ahead.
it's on the extent on the GFSX, the extended GFS, the tabular information they had on the precipitation type, the conditional precipitation type. They actually had not rain, but rain snow for Sunday
Oh, they did.
into Monday. So
Well, that's interesting.
so the machine is thinking too that maybe there might be some. I mean, not all snow, but possibly some snow for the end of the weekend. So we'll see.
See the icon. I want to go back to the zeros because the 12Z icon because the 18Z doesn't go out far enough. But if you look at the 12Z icon, of course, uh, well, I'll just roll back. So here's what we got tonight, and you see what happens with the system out of the Great Lakes. It just kind of weakens, and you get showers that some survive and some don't. So some of you might see some showers tomorrow, some of you won't, and then that goes out. Then you've got the stronger thing coming out for Thursday, and that sort of makes sense. It's got a low that goes up into the lakes and translates eastward. We get some rain on Thursday, and then that goes out. And then it's a little colder after that. Not a lot colder, but a little colder. The 540 thickness goes all the way down to the Virginia-North Carolina state line. Here comes the low out of the Gulf. Moves up along the Carolinas. You suddenly start to see snow break out Sunday afternoon in western North Carolina, in western Virginia, West Virginia, and then it sort of pushes it up the coast there with a low moving off the North Carolina coast. It's just kind of moving along to the northeast. The This is during Sunday night. It's all blue in New Jersey. It's blue over Long Island. It's blue in southern New England. It's blue in southeastern Pennsylvania and Delaware, Maryland, and eastern Virginia. And the European is not that different from this. It's got the same kind of idea. A lot of times the icon and the European are somewhat in sync. And that's what you're seeing
Lockstep.
here. Yeah. Oftentimes, because the icon comes out before the European, sometimes the icon will give you a clue as to what the European is going to do in its long range. So, again, there are a few things here that suggest that something could happen. Now, the GFS with the sharper trough and maybe the more phased look, and that's why what the GFS does for the same time frame, as you see, it takes another low and cuts it well to the west. Usually the GFS is the one that's more suppressed, and it's the European that does this. The models have been in reverse here. So I'm not going to rule this out though, because this is not impossible. Considering what the trend has been, you have to think that this is probably the more likely outcome, that you would have a more of an inland low for next weekend. But after that, you do start to see more significant colder air start to pull in. The GFS actually has one more storm on the 26th, and you see it here in western Pennsylvania, with maybe big snows in upstate New York and New England if this were to verify. But more importantly, it's got more significantly colder air that comes down behind that one, and then you got another nice cold high that comes down toward the end of the period. So it definitely has a much colder look to it for the last days of the month and going into January. So again, if you're a snow lover, you kind of have to look at this with a certain amount of skepticism. Actually, you have to look at this with a lot of skepticism at this point, and just have to wait just basically play the waiting game until we get a little closer. Maybe by Wednesday or Thursday, we'll get a good feel about whether that's going to turn out to be correct, or if we're going to break that hasn't snowed in 300 and however many days record.
Scott says, this is not Scott Briller, but Scott on the chat board. Actually, a few Scotts. We have Scott and Scott NYC. Scott is saying, I'm not putting gas in my snowblower until I see the whites of the storm's eye.
And nor should you. At this point, nor should you.
Actually, but on December 11th, we had a light snowfall of only about an inch. It looked like it could be more. It looked like it might be like 2-3 inches. and I did put not a whole heck of a lot of gas, but I did, and at least I got it started. The snowblower, my snowblower, but it's been sitting there in the garage. I passed it. I could have sworn yesterday when I passed it by, Joe. I could have sworn I heard my snowblower go.
Yeah.
I still love you. I will use you. I think maybe I've, I in the 21 winters I've been up here, 2 winters. There was one winter where I used my snowblower only 4 times, and that was actually the winter we had. I think it was the winter of 1920, 2019 to 2020. I only used it. That was where Central Park had less than 5 inches of snow, and there was one even further back in 2007 where I only used it 3 times. This is getting a little ridiculous, though, that we haven't needed to use it yet. And I can well remember in other years I've used it in October and I've used it in November, and here we are in mid-January, still waiting to get on out there and blow it all out.
Hey, look, big pluses in all of this is the fact that natural gas prices have crashed. Heating oil is, we're all looking in the fall thinking we're going to have like $6 or $7 a gallon heating oil. Just looking at right now, heating oil futures at 325, nat gas at 367. It was up at around $8 or $9 at one point. So you're not the lack of cold weather with that time around Christmas being the exception. That lack of cold weather has certainly saved a lot of folks a lot of money on heating bills. So that's a definite good thing.
It is. It is. I could remember when it was. I locked in with a fuel company, by the way, when it was like when heating oil was at the 525 or 550. I locked in at a price for 1 year at 411, which looked really good, but now it's not looking so good. But hey, that's the way it goes.
Yeah. All right. I don't have much else to say tonight. I'm you know, kind of said my piece and
Kind of run out of gas
run
tonight.
out of
It really,
gas. Can you think of
yeah.
anything to talk about?
No,
Oh,
not
you know
really.
what?
Well,
What we should say something about certainly about the passing of Bruce Avery at
oh yes, yes.
at News 12. I didn't know Bruce very well because he kind of came after I left News 12, and so I really didn't have a whole lot of interaction with him. But he was always in the times that we did meet up. He was very nice, nice guy. And from what I've been reading from the people who worked with him on a regular basis, he was wonderful to be around. It's very, very sad. I think he was 69, which is far too young.
Yeah,
Far too young.
he was the station manager for many years at the Hofstra college radio station. I forget I knew the original call letters were WVHC, and then they changed them, and after they changed them, that's when Bruce came in, and for many years, as I said, he was the station manager, and a lot of people who are in broadcasting say that he was there, that Bruce was their mentor in helping find a job and learning the business and learning the trade. But in addition to that, he also was a fill-in, usually on weekend mornings at News 12, doing the weather for mainly News 12 Long Island. And I think I only met him once, but it is sad when you realize that he was only in his 60s and he passed away. So rest in peace, Bruce. What else can you say about something like that?
Yeah. Well, apparently he had, from what I read, he had a fairly aggressive form of prostate cancer. So you guys, get yourself checked uh, uh, on a regular basis. If your doctor wants you to get checked, um, get checked, okay? Because they find it early, it's fixable.
Yes.
I know guys are a little touchy about that sort of thing, and and I get it. I get it. I'm a guy, but it's your life, so you want to make sure that you take care of yourself.
WRHU, David Schwartz points out. WRHU. That was the call letters of the Hofstra University radio station, and that's where Bruce spent a good deal of his time as, I guess, station manager or program director there, whatever. It was, again, sad to hear that Bruce passed away. Another person who passed away today, Joe, Frank Thomas. And interestingly, there are two baseball players. There was one who played for the White Sox, who was known as the Big Hurt, and that was one Frank Thomas. He was African American, but for the New York Mets, in their very early days, in fact, when they started in 1962, Frank Thomas was their #1 home run slugger, and he passed away today. I think he, at the age of 93 or 94, he made his last public appearance at Old Timers Day back over the summer at Citi Field. He hit the first New York Met home run at the Polo Grounds. He hit the first New York Met home run at Shea Stadium, and he was kidding people at before Old Timers Day last year that he was going to, during the Old Timers Day game, he was going to hit the first, not the first, but he was going to hit a home run at Citi Field. But he had to be brought in a wheelchair, and very funny guy. They had a big sign at the Polo Grounds out in left field, and it said, "Hit this sign and you'll win a boat." And there was a situation in a game where Frank Thomas was up, and there was a runner on base, a couple of runners on base. The situation called for him to hit the ball to right field, and instead it's obvious that he was trying to hit the ball to left, and obviously trying to hit that sign. And that's when Casey Stengel came out of the dugout after the third or fourth time of Thomas trying to hit that sign. He came out of the dugout and he yells to Frank Thomas. He said, "Hey, if you want to be a sailor, join the Navy."
Oh, good Lord.
Yep.
Oh well, what can you do, Joe? This is life.
We're almost going to start sounding like that conversation that Lucy and Ricky had in I Love Lucy, where Lucy said, "I don't want you to go."
Yeah.
and Ricky or Desi Arnaz says, "Well, we all have to go, honey,
We
unless
do.
unless you know something that we all don't."
No, I don't.
No, I don't.
12 likes to 100. So maybe the folks could hit the like button to get us to 100, and then we can say goodnight. Also, big highs to Scott Briller. His mom, still taking care of his mom as she is on a slow road to recovering and dealing with medical issues. So we send both Scott and Mother Briller our best. And hopefully Scott will be back soon.
Yes, hopefully he will.
Yeah, I guess that Gina Lola Brigida mentioned her. Yeah, I can't think of anybody else. And I don't want to stay around long enough for someone else to join the obit page. No, we don't want to do that. So on that note, let us now say goodbye. And
101. We hit 101, Joe.
Okay. Once again, a reminder, Wednesday, we're going to have Jen Walton on, who is the head of Girls Who Chase, storm chasing women. And we are going to talk to her about storm chasing and what it entails and how she decided she wanted to do this and get other women to do it with her. Think it's great, and she'll be on with us. That's a Wednesday night at 7:35 Eastern Time. We will, of course, be back tomorrow night at 7:35 Eastern Time right here on my YouTube channel, Joe Cioffi. So we'll see you then. In the meantime, just want to remind you that the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town. OmniTrueValue.com is the website. It's hard to imagine that there's going to be a run on rock salt, considering that nobody's used any yet. But you never know. It may disappear faster than you think. So, anyhow, we'll see you folks tomorrow. Nighty-night, everybody.
99. And thank you again to David Fuller, who hit super chats tonight, not once, but twice. And thank you again to Garo Vestas, Steve Lapointe, and we will be back tomorrow at 7:35. Hasta la vista.